India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is a special episode. It is actually the 50th episode of our podcast, so that makes it quite a landmark. And for this occasion, we have a special guest as well. So first of all, for introducing myself, I'm Siddhartha Vaidyanathan at Sidvi on Twitter. And joining me today is Clayton Murzello, who is Group Sports Editor of the Midday newspaper in Mumbai. He's also a dear friend of mine and someone I've known for the last close to, I would say, 16 to 17 years. So hello, Clayton. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sid. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, thank you for being here. And I must mention to our listeners that Clayton is much more than just a journalist. He's been a journalist for 3 decades, of course. But apart from that, he's also many other things. He's a collector of cricket memorabilia, a collector of cricket books. He has a wonderful library at his home. He's also someone who I consider a great friend of cricket, always ready to help former players, administrators, journalists, anyone related to cricket or unrelated to cricket. Clayton is ready to help. So with that introduction, Clayton, can you tell us a bit about how you got into cricket? I believe this was in the late 80s and early 90s. Can you talk us a bit through your journey?
Yeah, I got into cricket journalism because of my association with Mumbai cricket. I used to run a club, Sundar Cricket Club. They were the first winners of the Kanga League in 1948. And through my association with club cricket, I got into covering club cricket. And that's how I made my entry in Midday, although it started with cricket statistics. Way back in 1989.
So for people, wondering, how does one become a manager of a cricket club? How did that happen?
Well, it happened by accident. There was a very dear friend of mine, Kiran Asher, former Mumbai wicketkeeper batsman, who is sadly is no more. We got into a great friendship in 1988 when he was coaching St. Mary's, and that was a team which beat the mighty Shardashram in the Giles Shield final in 1988. And one day, while we were driving, Kiran asked me if I was interested in managing his club, his family club called Sundar Cricket Club. And I was very hesitant because I had no connection with cricket. But he told me that, he's no more keen on managing the club, and he requires someone to be there for all the Kanga League games. And he thought that I would be the right man for it. So I reluctantly accepted it, and I had a long association with the club. I still keep in touch with them, although I've stopped managing them since 1994, I think.
So what was it like managing them? I mean, this sounds like, day in and day out. It must have been, was it quite a bit of work? Was it quite challenging, especially on game days, which was during the weekends?
It was not a daily job. It was just Sundays during the Kanga League. And as you know, Kanga League Sundays get washed out quite often. And also there were other tournaments like the Purushottam, Talim and the Comrade Shields. It was not very taxing. But it was very new to me, and that was my great fear, because I had no experience of being in a tent. I had not played competitive cricket as such. So for me, it was quite a strange situation, but by the grace of God, I pulled through, and I think that changed my whole life, my association with Sundar Cricket Club, because I got to know a lot of players. I got to meet some everlasting friendships, and that was it.
Wonderful. Tell us a bit about how the Sundays went. I mean, the Sundays that weren't washed out. The Kanga League, of course, for those who aren't aware, happens in the monsoon season in India, and Mumbai is notorious for huge amounts of rain. So a lot of the games are washed out for that reason. But tell us a bit about how it was getting to know so many players and coaches and administrators. It must have been so exciting for you at that time?
Exciting and scary too, because just like the players had their fears about losing and about facing big challenges, big teams, Even I had my share of sleepless nights. I mean, a game before facing Dadar Union, it's not such a comfortable position to be in, and it's quite scary because you look out while you're jotting down your players' names, you see guys like Manjrekar coming in, Vengsarkar coming in, and then you wonder which bigger name is going to come to that match that day. So it's quite scary. And I don't remember Sundar beating Dadar Union anytime. In my research, I don't recollect Sundar beating Dadar Union anytime. Although Sundar was a big name club in those days.
It's one thing, though, I have heard from a few people, and you can confirm that apparently because this is a wet wicket tournament and a monsoon tournament, some of the great batsmen from Mumbai haven't necessarily been that good in Kanga League. And Kanga League has its own set of legends who are so good at playing on wet wickets. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. It exposes you quite a bit. But then, even a solid 9 or 10 runs in the Kanga League is invaluable. And it's very difficult to score those runs. So it's one tournament where you actually, you cannot measure a batsman by his scores. In the early part of the league, it's very difficult to score. As the league progresses in the months of September and October, then you see higher scores coming in. And that's how it is.
So it's almost like the opposite of what you would probably see in schools cricket, where where high scores are regularly built up. I mean, even to the extent of 1,000 runs, but that is an exception.
Yes.
But I'm saying Kanga League is the opposite, where even a 15 or a 20 can be a match-winning knock.
Yes. And as I said that, you cannot measure a batsman's ability by his scores in the Kanga League. At the same time, we have this great romantic limit for a score to come into the newspaper. If you scored a 20, or if you scored I think it was 30, you would get your name in the papers. And I think that was quite a bit of motivation for the Mumbai players to get that name in the brief scores.
Very interesting. So talking about Dadar Union, I mean, again, for those who are not familiar, one of the most storied and successful clubs in all cricket, not just Indian cricket. There is a certain reverence that people in Mumbai have for that club over the years, but probably you can confirm if it's even now. Recently, I was reading your obituary of Madhav Apte, who sadly passed away, and there he had mentioned you had mentioned how at the age of 64 he scored a half century against Dadar Union and won Jolly Rovers the match, and how even till today people were talking about that game. So there is a certain aura, right, about Dadar Union and beating them and doing well against them.
Huge. It was quite simple. If you perform against Dadar Union, you were considered a Bombay potential. And I remember the late Pradeep Vijayakar always stressing this point, the late Pradeep Vijayakar, the cricket writer, who used to say that play for Dadar Union, play for Bombay. So that was quite true in some ways. You perform for Dadar Union or you perform against Dadar Union meant that you were a serious contender for the Mumbai team. I don't think they ever put out a mediocre team on the park. And if you got runs against them, you were a changed man. You were a changed cricketer.
Can you talk a bit about the history? I mean, is it who would you say were the architects of that club? I think was Vijay Manjrekar one of those?
No, Vijay Manjrekar played for the rival. So that was Shivaji Park
he
Gymkhana.
played for Shivaji Park Gymkhana. Yeah, but
while his son Sanjay Manjrekar played for Dadar Union, much to his displeasure. Vijay Manjrekar had to be really convinced by Vasu Paranjpe that Sanjay playing for Dadar Union was a good move. In fact, I hear a story which says that Vijay Manjrekar was told by Vasu Paranjpe that if you want your son to be a good card player, let him join Shivaji Park Gymkhana. But if you want your son to be a good cricketer, let him join Dadar Union. Vijay Manjrekar did not give in very easily. But I heard that it only took a phone call later from Vasu Paranjpe to Vijay Manjrekar, where he said that, come on, Tat, let him play, let the boy play. And that's how Sanjay Manjrekar played for Dadar Union.
Okay. So that is where my confusion came in. So I somehow thought that both the father and son played for the same club. But who are the of course there was Sunil Gavaskar, but even before that, can you talk about the giants who built up Dadar Union and its reputation, which continued after that?
Well, they had a bowling attack which was called the P factor, or you could call it the P factor. That was Patil, V.S. Patil, Narayan Pai, and K.R. Panjri.
Okay, so this must have been
they
in
were
the
the
50s
top performers
and 60s.
for Dadar Union.
Yeah.
And talking about V.S. Patil, his contribution to the club has been immense. He was a great torchbearer of the club. He performed for the club. He took 700 odd wickets for the club in the Kanga League, which is a record. And till his dying day, he served that club. So I would say Dadar Union's biggest hero was V.S. Patil, who is sadly no more. Another big hero for Dadar Union has been Vasu Paranjpe, because his leadership was exceptional. He was not a conventional leader. He gave a lot of freedom to players. At the same time, Dadar Union kept their history intact, the history of being the best education for a cricketer. And I think that is missing right now.
Yeah, V.S. Patil, who was nicknamed Marshall, right? Because of his bowling. And that is, I think, also a Dadar Union / Mumbai club tradition where players got nicknamed based on other international cricketers. Like there was George Mantri and Marshall Patil.
Yes. It was a fascinating system. Where in one team, they had Colonel, that is Vengsakar. They had Major, which was Suresh Tigdi. They had Marshall, which was Vittal Patil. They had George, which was Madhav Mantri. And that's how it went.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But talking about the club itself, I mean, there's also these legendary stories of how Vasu Paranjpe was such a strict disciplinarian that even anybody who came late, including Sunil Gavaskar, would not be spared. And, there is a certain military discipline to playing for that club, wasn't it?
Yes, that was a tradition. You had to be on time. In Mumbai cricket, they say, the Dadar Union time. You had to be on time for a match, otherwise you were dropped. There was no two ways. There was no big fuss about it. Even players who were coming late knew that they would be dropped. And there was no dramas or there was no shock in that kind of treatment. And it seeped through the other players as well. I remember a guy called Avdut Zarabkar who played for Sundar, and he came from Dadar Union. This was the year before I started managing the club. I was just visiting the club, our tent at Cross Maidan rather, and suddenly I see a club star player, sitting out. And I asked someone in the tent, isn't he a big performer for the club and why is he sitting out? And the person told me that he's dropped for today's match. I said, why? He said he came late. Now there is a story to that. The captain, Avdut Zarabkar, dropped his best friend. This guy who sat out was Avdut's best friend. And he came just 2 minutes late. And even, the guy was coming from Cross Maidan, from the Karnataka end of Cross Maidan. And he kept waving to Avdut, saying that I'm here. And all what he got from his captain was a thumbs down. And he was promptly dropped.
Wow.
So that was Dadar Union. That was Dadar Union's legacy.
Wow. Okay. Talking about legacy, though, there's also been the historic rivalry between Dadar Union and Shivaji Park. You've touched upon it in the Vijay Manjrekar, Sanjay Manjrekar anecdote. But Sandeep Patil once told me, very interestingly, he said that, you'll traditionally find Dadar Union and Shivaji Park batsmen being slightly different. Dadar Union being the more technically correct and, very dogged batsman. And of course, he pointed to Sunil Gavaskar as an example. And then he said Shivaji Park, the more flamboyant and aggressive batting, like himself and Tendulkar and a few others. Is that a generalization, or do you think there's some truth in that?
There is an iota of truth in that, but no one can say that Dadar Union were not attacking their cricket. I mean, if there was half a chance to get to a total, Dadar Union would always go for it. And many a time they would achieve that target. So it's not that Dadar Union played their cricket defensively and stuff like that. No. They were a very attacking team and they went for every target.
Okay, and you also, I remember you mentioning once to me how aggressive and attacking they were on the field.
They used to win matches on their fielding at times. Even if the opposition had to just chase about 60 odd runs in a Kanga League match, Dadar Union's fielding would be top class. And you can imagine, with a good bowling attack, with a good fielding side, the results were not surprising. Having said that, I have not watched a lot of Dadar Union matches. I'm just going by what I have heard over the years and what I've read over the years.
Sure. I think that is what I was looking for as well, because, you're also a keen student of Mumbai cricket and its history. So I think this was very good. So moving on from your days in Sundar to,
yes.
It was also around that time, the late 80s, early 90s, it also coincided with Tendulkar's entry into not just international cricket, but also, his entry into his rise in Mumbai cricket. And in the late 80s, if you go through the press clippings and things, there's a feverish excitement around Tendulkar and Kambli, but more so about Tendulkar because he makes his Ranji Trophy debut. And, the articles that people like Pradeep Vijaykar and a few other people, even I think Rajdeep Sardesai used to be a regular reporter at that time, writer. And I have not read that about any cricketer since. I mean, of course, we have had several others come through, but there was something magnificent about those years, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think he lit up Mumbai cricket like no other player. Because you remember, Mumbai had not won the Ranji Trophy after 85-86. And then came Tendulkar, and then there was a gap again. Because after 85-86, they won for the first time in 93-94 under Shastri. So Tendulkar was like a hope because we were doing everything right, but we were not just winning Ranji Trophy. So I think that changed a few things. Maybe Mumbai got a bit more aggressive in their batting, and Tendulkar was all over the place. In fact, and remember, he was a great fan of club cricket. Not a great fan, he had to play club cricket, of course. But he also loved playing club cricket. And it's unfortunate that he couldn't play more because, and I don't think the ground conditions helped that in any way. I don't think the ground conditions are very good for top players to come and play local cricket now. You have got to put that in perspective. A lot of the time, club cricketers test players are accused of not playing club cricket. But I think you should provide them with better ground facility. And when Tendulkar could play club cricket, he did. In fact, the first time I interacted with Tendulkar was in a tent at Cross Maidan during a Purushottam Shield match. He was playing for Shivaji Park youngsters and I was managing Sundar cricket.
And what was the interaction like?
I was, in those days, I was just a freelancer. So I wanted a small interview with him. And I approached him and he very kindly agreed. He invited me over to his Bandra East residence. And I also remember him giving me directions how to get there, which bus to take and which bus stop to get off, and then walk to his place.
Wonderful. So talking about that phase that you said, when they didn't win the Ranji Trophy through the late 80s and early 90s, but they came close by one run on a day in Mumbai, and I think you were at the game, right?
No, I was at the bookshop at work.
Okay.
I followed that game on radio, and what a wonderful game it was! What a wonderful side Mumbai had. Look at that batting lineup. Except Shastri, I think Shastri had gone to play county cricket after the previous game, and a very good side. And many people forget that it was Sanjay Manjrekar who was Mumbai's captain and not Vengsarkar.
Yes. And I was just saying, that lineup, it had Sanjay Manjrekar, Dilip Vengsarkar, Tendulkar, Kambli, Salil Ankola, Abhay Kuruvilla, all of them, of course, India players. And it also had Lalchand Rajput, who opened. Crazy strong lineup. But the one thing that struck me was on the final day, They were chasing 355 in just like a little over 2 sessions, and they were 34 for 3 at lunch. Still they went for it. I mean, I guess they had no choice. They had to go for it because it was the final and they would have lost anyway. But Tendulkar, 96 of 75 balls. I mean, that must have been one of the great sights for those watching.
Yeah, I mean, I missed that game. There was no way I could get to that game. But I remember interviewing Vengsarkar later, and he told me that he couldn't sleep. Seriously, he couldn't sleep for a couple of weeks after that.
Oh my God! Yeah, I mean, I think the famous sight of that game was him in tears at the end of it, and how the umpire had to basically lift him up and take him and make him go back to the dressing room because that's how disconsolate he was. And then even in the dressing room, I think he was crying for a long time.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, despite Mumbai having won 41 trophies, the people often talk about the games that they lost, like the semi-final against Karnataka in 74 when the streak was broken, or this particular game. It is like the defeats seem to have hurt so much more than the victories, cherished.
Yeah. No, it was an amazing phase. You refer to that game where the streak was broken. It was an amazing... I remember Michael Holding saying something in Fire in Babylon that no other team, he also said that no other team in sports, apart from cricket, had a 15-year domination like the West Indies. But Bombay had. Bombay won 15 years in a row.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's curious that he said that when in his own sport, there is an example.
Yeah. And talking about, chasing big totals and looking to overall big totals for a first innings lead. I mean, the one match which I was there for and I reported on it was the 2000 Ranji Trophy semi-final between Tamil Nadu and Bombay. Tamil Nadu scored, I think, 485 and Mumbai overall that score through Tendulkar's double century.
Yeah, his 233.
And after that double century, the next top scorer was Kamli with 75.
Yeah, and I think he put on a huge partnership with the last wicket.
Yeah, Abhi Kuruvilla. Scored no runs, but he was there for 15 balls. It was an amazing match, and I watched that match from the players' enclosure of Wankhede Stadium. It was a terrific experience.
It's even in this day of YouTube videos and so much of video footage, we still have no footage of that game. And one of Tendulkar's great innings is just nobody can see it now.
Yeah, I hope someone may have shot it. I don't know. In those early days. Probably the board has some archives, but I hope it's there because that was an epic knock.
I mean, it must have been especially then. I mean, it was around the time when he had just in '99 he had made that famous 136 against Pakistan and they had lost the game, and this was a year later. And if it was anything like that innings, it must have been something else, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to speak to the Tamil Nadu players. Of the sheer quality of that innings. And he just couldn't do anything wrong that season. Mumbai went on to beat Hyderabad in the final and they won the game and won the championship. Ashok Mankad was coach. Then came a bit of a drop. I think they didn't win for another 2 years, but things went along.
Yeah, then they won. I was at the game when they won against Tamil Nadu again in Chennai when Sairaj Bartule led them to victory.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I think they won the previous year also in Mumbai with Nishit Shetty and them doing well. Yeah, so they won twice.
Yeah, I think they lost. They lost a game in Chennai, which put them out of the Ranji Trophy.
Yeah, that was maybe 2 years before that, and then in 2003 they won again, and 2004 also they won. And of course they won quite a few times after that. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, of course there are great Mumbai batsmen. I mean great batsmen from Mumbai who have played for India and who are all-time greats. But then there are also this great batsmen for the Mumbai Ranji team, right? I mean, someone like Ajit Wadekar may not be considered an all-time great in the international sense, but for Mumbai, he was invincible at times, right?
Yes, Ajit Wadekar, Ashok Mankad.
Exactly, yeah.
Giant of a player.
And even in the modern sense, I mean, someone like Wasim Jafar and Amul Muzumdar, who
Yes.
didn't, who didn't really make it into the great Indian batting scheme, but for Mumbai, they were so invaluable.
Yes, and we often tend to forget these batting exploits of a Jaffer or a Buzumdar, because sometimes we get too caught up in the past. And, I don't think they've got enough credit for what they've done for Mumbai cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, now Jaffer is continuing to do this even for Vidarbha. I mean, at this age.
Yeah. And what a great mentor he's turned out to be.
Absolutely. And talking about Jaffer, actually, I want to bring in the next point, which is Jaffer was one of the several Mumbai cricketers who came to the spotlight in schools cricket. And, Mumbai cricket, especially the schools cricket circuit, seems to produce, every few years, seems to produce this prodigy who then everyone looks to be the next big thing. I mean, of course, the latest example is Prithvi Shaw, who's having his own struggles now, but hopefully he will come back. But what is it about schools cricket that makes these batting sensations? And often there is no bowling prodigy that comes out of this. There's only batting prodigies. Why is this?
Obviously, the wickets have to be taken into consideration. Very often the wickets are batting beauties. Very often there are quality performances, but the player just cannot cope with the expectations. We had a case a few years ago of a batsman scoring 1,000 runs in an inter-school game.
Yeah, Pranav Dhanawade.
Yes. But sadly, he's not been able to cope with those expectations. And, it's a nice story because his coach, Mobin Sheikh, advised him to stop taking the grant from the Mumbai Cricket Association. I think it was 10,000 per month. He told the kid to stop taking that grant and just concentrate on getting big scores and concentrating on upping his game. And I think that was a fairly good move, and I hope Pranav comes to the fore.
Do you also think, I mean, there were articles at that time, and I'm sure, I think even Midday published a couple saying that many of these records are not to be taken seriously because the bowling attacks are often extremely weak, the pitches, and then of course the umpires, and then there's also this pressure that many coaches put on the umpires. Is that all fair?
Yeah, it has to be viewed in perspective. You must take the bowling attacks into consideration, the ground conditions, the size of the ground, and of course the technique of the player. But I think the big factor is the bowling attacks. I mean, the bowling attacks must have been really poor for those batsmen to score so many runs.
Yeah, I mean, when Tendulkar and Kamli scored 664, I mean, you had a bowler like Sairaj Bartule in the opposite team. And Sairaj Bartule then went on to play for India even. So, there was a certain quality there, even then.
But there was the quality in that batting lineup also. I mean, Amol Muzumdar stayed padded for eternity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was sheer quality in that batting lineup also.
Yeah, and talk about the pressure. I mean, you spoke about the pressures a bit, and in a way, I think in no other city in India do you have players at the age of 10, 11, 12 making headlines like the way they do in Mumbai. But there is a flip side to it, right? As you said, I mean, the pressure becomes enormous.
Yes, and that's where when mentoring gets into. You have the right mentors, you can pull through. If you don't, cricket can be a very lonely sport. I mean, I just shudder to think what Pranav must be going through. He must be waking up every morning and thinking about that pressure of that 1,000 runs. But luckily, he's got a good mentor in Mobin Sheikh. But that's what every player needs. Every player needs a great mentor, someone who he can look up to, someone who could tell him now, stop thinking about your achievements and just think about the next innings. That's what used to happen in Mumbai cricket. I'm not sure it's happening right now. I'm not sure young players have those kind of mentors, and I'm not sure whether they give in to all these distractions often.
So where did the mentors usually come from? Were they club coaches? Were they people who were, administrators? Where would the mentors traditionally come from?
From your own club, from your very own tent. There used to be seniors who would pull you up. There used to be seniors who would, it did not matter to them how many runs you scored in the previous innings. What mattered was what you do when you go out next. That was relentless mentoring, and that is lacking in Mumbai cricket today. What is also lacking in Mumbai cricket is the strength of club cricket. Club cricket is no more significant. If your club cricket is strong, your cricket will be strong. And it's high time we stop thinking too much of this 41 Ranji titles. Yes, 41 Ranji titles is a great achievement. But let's not get carried away with that.
Compared to when you started off, and I even when I lived in Mumbai between 2003 and 2008, do you think that currently the coverage too of local cricket, schools cricket, I mean, apart from your midday, of course, which still does, but do you think overall the general coverage too has drastically reduced and the priority have changed?
It has, but as a newspaper man, I'll tell you that there are a lot of other things which also have to be covered. So it's difficult, when you have a bad day, when you have really limited space for other sports or for everything, it becomes difficult to highlight everything what's happening.
Yeah,
yes, the coverage has reduced, but times have changed.
I was just thinking back to your point where you said back in earlier the players used to want that dream score of 30 in the Kanga League to get into the brief scores. I'm wondering what is that incentive now for a player to get 100 or 30 or whatever? Where does he go after that? Is there a problem with that kind of motivation is what I'm asking.
Firstly, I don't think that should be a motivation. The idea should always be to score significantly for your team. And there's a danger to that. If you're thinking about getting your name in the papers for a 30, there's a danger in that. You may be selfish also in your play. But overall, I don't think that should be a motivation. Yeah, that could be a satisfaction, but I don't think that should be a motivation. Your motivation should be to do well for your team.
So one of
and I don't think, the press should be dependent on, getting Mumbai cricket up. I think it should start from administration. The administrators hold the key to this.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, even if the newspapers and the websites don't cover it, I mean, if there is a phenomenal performance, invariably you will find somebody.
Yeah, it invariably gets covered. So there should be no concerns about that.
And it will invariably somebody will post something on social media. There'll be a video. There are multiple ways to get your name out there if you do well. So I think that shouldn't be a factor. But one of the other things I wanted to touch upon is that, the mentorship aspect and the coaches, people like Vasu Paranjpe or even at the lower level, Ramkant Achrekar, is there a bit of a vacuum in that sense as well, in terms of those veteran, great coaches who everyone could look up to and also listen to and who everyone took help from?
Huge vacuum. Also, there is a lack of people in clubs. The torchbearers of the clubs are lacking. For example, there used to be a guy called Rashid Kudroli who used to manage Karnataka Cricket Club, Karnataka Sporting Association.
Okay.
For which Ravi Shastri and Shishir Hattangadi played for in their younger years. I mean, Shishir Hattangadi was telling me the other day that Kudroli used to accompany them for a selection camp just to ensure that, these are my kids. Give them a fair go. So that sort of involvement I don't see in Mumbai cricket anymore. The club secretaries used to be obsessed about their players, obsessed about their teams. Now they are obsessed about something else.
So I also need to bring in a couple of things. I mean, as I wanted to mention to our listeners about that very touching story about Vilas Godbole. And I will, of course, link the article, but Clayton does a weekly quiz on Facebook. And on that quiz, he had asked a question about, a visual question about first-class cricketers from Mumbai. He had put in 4 of them and asked them to identify 4 or 5. And one of the cricketers out there was Vilas Godbole, and who had played one game against Ceylon for Mumbai, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and still the Mumbai Cricket Association did not deem him a first-class player because I think that game was just forgotten, and because it wasn't a Ranji Trophy game, Godbole himself didn't give it too much thought. But
Yes.
now that he saw this, then there was a sort of a move made to help him get a pension, right? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, it was one of those quizzes where I showed a picture of the Mumbai Cricket Association managing committee. I think this was the managing committee of the 1980-81 season. And Vilas Godbole was in that committee. And many people did not identify him as a first-class cricketer. And his son came home that evening and told Vilas Godbole that, look, there's a Facebook quiz. And do you know that you are a first-class cricketer? And he said, no, I did not know. But I know I played for Mumbai in that match. But I did not know that I was a first-class cricketer. So I think Makrand Vaingankar also encouraged him to write to the MCA telling them that, look, I am a first-class cricketer, I am due for pension. And that's how Vilas Godbole is getting a pension these days. So, it feels really great that people are recognized in this fashion.
Yeah, it's amazing. A small act of, and the total, I mean, in a way, a coincidence, but still, the fact that you were doing the quiz and you brought up this question, it helped him in a big way.
Yeah, and another satisfying aspect was this article was mentioned in the 2019 edition of Wisden in the Chronicle section.
Oh, wow.
So Godbole even made Wisden Cricketers Almanac.
Oh, wow. I mean, until recently, he didn't even know he was a first-class cricketer, and then he made his name was in Wisden. Wonderful.
Yes, yeah. And it was wonderful of Midday also, the editor of Midday, to take this on page 1. And I only hope that Godbole gets his past dues. He's getting the pension now, but he's not getting it for the period before that. Because he is indeed a first-class cricketer and he deserves that pension.
Oh, yes. They definitely should give him the pension even before all this came to light.
Yeah, in retrospect, yeah.
Absolutely. Another cricketer who you have often told me about and I had no idea about before was Vijay Bhosle, who was a very fine batsman. Can you talk a bit about him? And also, you had a very poignant story about him as well.
Vijay Bhosle, yeah, one of my good friends, of course, very senior to me. One of my good friends on the Mumbai circuit. His son Sangram played for Sundar, so I got to know him better. He was a former selector also, Vijay Bhosle. I admire Vijay Bhosle because he's one of the few guys who played for 3 states in the Ranji Trophy: Baroda, Maharashtra and Bombay. And Vijay Bhosle came to Bombay from Maharashtra and became a regular in the Mumbai team. With all those great stars playing, Vijay Bhosle was among them.
This was in the 70s, right?
This was in the late 60s and early 70s.
Okay.
I think his last game, he played his last game against Maharashtra, his former team, in the 1970-71 final. And it so happened that it was a close game and Vijay Bhosle scored some vital runs in that game. And had he got out, Maharashtra would have won. So cricket is such a funny game that his last first-class game was against his previous Ranji Trophy team, with Chandu Borde leading Maharashtra.
Wow.
And Vijay Bhosle, I also remember Vijay Bhosle because apparently he gave Gavaskar his kit bag. Vijay Bhosle used to go to play league cricket in England. And there's a story that he gave Gavaskar a kit bag to take to the West Indies in 1971. And Gavaskar apparently returned that kit bag. And the day Gavaskar retired from Test cricket, Vijay Bhosle burned that bag.
Oh, wow. yeah, it's like symbolic.
Yeah, they were neighbors in the Hindu colony at Dadar, Vijay Bhosle and Gavaskar.
Wow. We haven't touched much upon Gavaskar, of course. I mean, because you started your career with Tendulkar. But can you tell us a bit about the shadow that Gavaskar still casts? I mean, over Mumbai cricket. I mean, he's of course been well into commentary for decades now, and past his cricketer, but he is still, I mean, you can say that he was Mumbai cricket's first superhero, right?
In a way, of course, there have been heroes before him.
I guess Vijay Merchant was there before that. Yeah.
Yes. Mankad, Merchant, Vijay Manjrekar. I mean, Gavaskar again was a great fan of club cricket. Never miss a game. I was doing an article on Rajasthan Sports Club, who won the Kanga League in 1979. And through my research, I found out that Gavaskar played the Oval Test of 1979, left England, and in 3 days' time, he was playing the Kanga League for Dadar Union against Rajasthan.
This was after his 222 at the Oval.
221 at the Oval.
221, yeah.
He left England, I think, 2 days later, landed in Mumbai, played the Kanga League game. That very night, flew to Madras to play the test match against Australia in 1979, September 1979.
Wow.
So that's the kind of dedication players had for their club. I mean, a lot of the time, Gavaskar has been cited as an example of coming to Mumbai in the morning and then playing the Kanga League. But even this is outstanding. That he could have taken that game off and said that, look, I'm flying off to Chennai tonight and I can't play this game. But he was there. Vengsarkar also has played for Dadar Union very, very often after coming from a tour. Interesting thing about Vengsarkar is that he played the A Division Kanga League for only one club, and that is Dadar Union. He never played for any other club in the A Division. Only Dadar Union.
Okay. I think when we mention Gavaskar, we must mention that when he played, it was around the heyday of corporate cricket as well, right? And
yes.
Talk a bit about that. I mean, there are so many stories about the famous games between the banks and the corporates, and you keep posting it on Facebook as well. I mean, that must have been some heady contests that time with the big players.
They say a Nidlon Mafatlal game was like an India-Pakistan game. And there's no reason to disbelieve that. You speak to anyone who are part of that game, those games. You even speak to umpire Pilu reporter the other day was telling me about how competitive those time shield matches were. And I think Gavaskar's mentioned in One Day Wonders that he wouldn't walk in two cases. One is an India-Pakistan game and the other a Nidlon Mafatlal's game. So that gives you an idea of how competitive those games were. Tremendous.
And when did corporate cricket and even college cricket, right? Even Gavaskar used to play a lot for college cricket as well, university and college cricket. When did that kind of decline? Was it more towards the 90s or a little after that?
I think early 90s, where I think companies have stopped recruiting cricketers for reasons best known. Then they don't feel that there's enough mileage enough. But it's a great decline. You know, the time shield, the other inter-office tournaments. I think they just played because they have to be played right now, which is very sad, which is a great loss to Mumbai cricket. Your club and office cricket were the backbones of Mumbai cricket. And I think it's gone now.
So since when you began, I mean, we've of course spoken about a few games, but can you pick out maybe one or two other games? It could be any level. It could be club, it could be Ranji or international. Of course, I don't want to make it appear as if you are a local Mumbai reporter. You have toured abroad and covered a lot of Indian cricket as well. We can come to that shortly. But, in purely Mumbai circles, is there any other game that you remember apart from that Tamil Nadu game? And
I remember. I would like to point to a few club matches. I remember in maybe 1992, Rajasthan were playing Dadar Union at Cross Maidan, and Dadar Union had scored, I think, about 62 or 63. And someone met Jatin Paranjpe in an eatery lane near Cross Maidan. It's called Cow Gully.
Okay.
And everyone was surprised that Dadar Union were bowled out for 62 or 63. And when Jatin was asked about it, Jatin was playing for Dadar Union. And he said, yeah, that 62, 63, it's enough for us. And he was right, because Dadar Union bowled out Rajasthan for around 50. And I watched that game because the game at Sundar got over early. So I went to the other side and I watched that game. And that was a game where they won also because of their fielding, top class fielding. And of course, they are pace bowlers, Ramesh Rajde and Ajit Putran. But I also remember that game for their top class fielding. And I also remember Vengsarkar and Manjrekar at slip. Great game, great memory for me.
So when they talk about Mumbai cricket and also Dadar Union, you often hear the word Caduce. Is that what you would define it as? I mean, that will to win in all circumstances?
They had that Kadus attitude, but let's not get carried away with this Kadus attitude. I think other teams also have that Kadus attitude. Everyone come to the park to win. I wouldn't say it's unique, but yes, Mumbai had a bit more of that Kadus attitude. But in no way it is unique, because even other teams are Kadus. And I think we have got to identify that. We have got to give credit to other teams also. When you're looking at the larger picture in domestic cricket, other teams also have worked on their cricket. They've got better, and Mumbai has to realize that.
Yeah, and only Kadus cannot win you a game.
Only Kadus really cannot win you a game. It has to be good administration, good commitment, good mentors. It's a package. It's a package which makes a champion.
Absolutely. Now, moving on, I think through a large part of the 90s, when you were working with Midday, you, of course, covered a lot of games.
I'm still working in Midday.
Yes, you're still working in Midday.
25 years now. Yeah.
25 years. And I must mention here that this is probably a rarity in Indian sports journalism. Very rarely do you find people sticking on to the same publication for so long. So yes, back then, one of the interesting bits you told me was you had this airport duty, where whenever a team used to land from a foreign tour, or whenever a player used to come into the Mumbai airport, and often at odd hours, you would be there hoping for an interview or a quick, news break. Can you tell us when this started and how you felt about it?
Well, invariably, I was always sent on airport duty. I had no complaints about it. But I was at the airport for every team arrival. I remember when Tendulkar was going through his back injury, many a time he used to travel abroad, and then I used to be at the airport when he used to come back. And to his credit, he always spoke to me, and I admire him for that. I mean, never did he shoo me away. Never did he say that I don't want to comment on anything. And those were difficult years for him, remember, because his back was a career-threatening injury. And let's face it, no one likes to speak to reporters when they land from a tour where they've gone to get cured. So I did a lot of those airport duties. And of course, my most satisfying one was when the Indian team came from their tour of England in '96. I interviewed Tendulkar after he arrived, and there was a crowd gathered at the airport, and we just couldn't talk. And he requested me to call the next day. But I had an edition to close that night, so I requested him that, can you talk to me right now? He said, okay, come into the car. So I got into the car and we started talking. There was no intention of doing the interview while he was driving, but we just couldn't talk because the crowd surrounded the car. So he had to get the car out of the way. And he said, you interview me while I'm driving. And I did so. And at one point of time, I asked him about the India captaincy, because India had lost that series to England. And I think Tendulkar was vice captain of the team. I asked him about the captaincy, of the possibility of him becoming captain. And he very surprisingly told me that I am ready for the captaincy. And I think he gave me my biggest story that night.
So that was the first time that he had said something to that effect, right?
I would think so.
And you remember the moment so well that you still remember the turning when he said that. I think you told me that once.
Yes, I remember he telling me this when the car turned towards the Andheri highway from the airport road.
Wow, and he was driving the car after coming back?
Yeah, he was driving the car. Yeah. In fact, I think this was a new car which he had bought. And he requested his brother to give him the keys and he would drive. I think that was surprising. Landing in Mumbai and then, wanting to drive home. And not only that, he ensured that I was dropped at the right place. His brother ensured that I don't walk alone on a lonely road, because I think it was maybe 2 a.m. And they were very concerned about how I got home. But that was, that's Tendulkar and that's Tendulkar's family.
I mean, I guess for all the airport duties you did that one night, probably you look back and say, okay, it was worth it.
Definitely.
Also, you were in Mumbai for the first test of the 2001 series, right? The famous series that India won against was Australia.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, and at that time, I think there was. You had said how, I mean, of course, India lost that match, but you had also said that that was one of your favorite Tendulkar innings on the first.
Yeah, morning. In fact, two innings that he played during that Test match were wonderful to watch. I was not covering that Test match, so but I watched it from the press box. Two wonderful innings, and I remember he hit McGrath for a boundary, and Raj Singh, sitting in front of the press box, just stood up and applauded, and had that disbelief on his face that how could that shot be hit. I remember that moment. I think it was in the first innings, on the first morning itself.
And Raj Singh Dungarpur, who had seen perhaps more cricket than anyone in that press box.
Yes, he was sitting outside the press box, just in front of us.
Yeah, tell us a bit about him. I mean, I know you had a great relationship with him, and the little I met with him and saw him, he seemed like a terrific storyteller.
And at any time of the day, he used to never tire telling stories. And what a lovely man. I mean, I remember an incident. I had gone to on the invitation of the organizers for a festival match in Dhaka. This was the night when the Hansi Cronje tapes story broke.
And this was the famous Michael Bevan innings, right?
Correct. Yes, at Dhaka. And the night before that, the Hansi Cronje story broke, and actually it was a junket for me, and it was nothing but a junket because I worked through the whole night, as did other journalists also, getting reactions. And I remember speaking, and I also remember Tendulkar talking to me over the phone. We were staying in the same hotel, and he spoke to me over the phone. He could, what could you say in a situation like that? But I remember him giving me a few quotes. And a little before that, I went down to the coffee shop and I saw Raj Singh there, and he insisted I have a sandwich with him. And when it came to paying the bill, he said, nothing doing, Clayton, I will pay the bill. Although there's nothing to celebrate tonight. In the midst of all this, there was a young Bangladeshi cricket fan whom Raj Singh identified and said, he looks to be a great fan of cricket. So he was talking to this kid, and they must have spoken about Lords and the aura of Lords and things like that. And I remember Raj Singh telling this kid that, if you ever come to Lords and if you want to be taken around, get in touch with me, I'll organize that. And that was the measure of the man. I mean, he could be so kind to someone who he did not know at all. And I gauged kindness on that. If you're kind to someone who you do not know at all, you're a great guy. And Raj Singh was a great guy.
Yeah, very often when we used to just go into CCI for an event or just walk into CCI for the heck of it and run into Raj Singh, you would invariably find even a man of that stature, I mean, former president of the BCCI and, a man who wore so many hats, he would spend half an hour, 1 hour just talking to you about things ranging from C.K. Naidu to Binu Mankad to Lala Amarnath, all the way until Tendulkar. And,
it's a great tragedy that he couldn't write a book. I mean, he could have written one of the finest books in Indian cricket, but he just did not get down to writing. Maybe no one spoke to him about it. Maybe he was not motivated enough to write a book. But he had a lot of stuff on Indian cricket, and he could analyze. His player-to-player analysis were fantastic to hear.
Yeah, talking about, moving on from airport duty, but talking about coverage as such. Midday, of course, is they have a morning edition, but I think, can you talk a bit about the kind of stories that you look for? Because you're not the traditional match report writer. I mean, you do match reports as well, but being a newspaper that often comes out in various editions, you also look for the offbeat story or the something different, right? I mean, and you invariably end up finishing very late in the night, and it's often a scramble for stories, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a struggle. It's also very satisfying to do different kind of stories. I mean, although we are a morning paper, we come out in the morning, but our slants, we try to give different slants to stories. It was the same when we were in the afternoon space. So, naturally we are bent to a different angle story. And that's what you will find in midday invariably, a different slant to a story. So probably I've only worked for midday. So that just comes naturally to me. And many a times it's not appreciated. And, there's a lot of criticism for tabloidish stories. But if you look at the general journalism scene right now, I think everyone loves a tabloid story, and every reporter also likes to take that angle. So let's not be hypocritical about it.
Yeah, now I think everyone is looking for that angle instead of mainstream. I mean, you rarely find people doing match reports anymore, right? Because everyone wants to do the extra, or they want to do the viral. They want to go viral. So,
Yes.
but talking about tours, I mean, you have of course covered tours you covered matches in England, Australia, South Africa. I think you were at the World Cup and other places. Any favorite stories specifically that you can tell us about? Things that you were proud of publishing? Maybe it could be an interview, or it could be any offbeat story that you did?
Many memorable moments on tour. But there was also one which stands out, which happened in India during the 1996 World Cup. I was covering the inaugural match of that edition, the England versus New Zealand game in Ahmedabad, where Nathan Astle got 100.
Yeah.
And like I said about midday's coverage, we always looked out for something different. And I was staying just side of the team hotel. The team was staying in the Kama hotel. And I went across and I was hoping to get an interview with Nathan Astle, because I don't think he had come for the press conference. And I entered the hotel reception and I heard that the team was in a party on the ground floor of the hotel. And it would take quite a while. That was I was told. But I waited there for at least 1.5 hours. And Glenn Turner, the manager of the team, the coach rather of the team, was the first to step out. And I knew Glenn Turner a bit because I had covered the previous season where New Zealand visited India in 95-96. So I asked him that, can you make Nathan Astle available for a few minutes? And he said no, because everyone's in a party mood now. So he politely declined and he went up to his room. And the next moment I see Nathan Astle stepping out of the party door. So I approached him and he said, he was very kind. And he said, look, I can't do the interview now, maybe tomorrow. So I said, okay. I was getting ready to leave the hotel. And suddenly I hear Nathan Astle calling me out. And he said, don't worry, we'll do the interview right away. And of course, I was thrilled. And we went up to the first floor. And in the course of that interview, he told me a very emotional story. He said, I would not have been on this tour because my grandfather died before the tour and I was in no mood to come on this tour. But my grandmother forced me to go on the tour, and she told me that get 100 for grandpa, and I've scored 100 today. And I thought that was a marvelous story, what he related.
Wow. So he hadn't mentioned this before to anyone?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess if he didn't...
Because this was fresh out, this was the same evening of his 100, so I don't think he mentioned it to anyone. And
wow. That
you could call it a scoop.
Thrilling to hear.
Yeah. And on tour, there were many memorable stories, many great personalities to meet. I mean, I've been very fortunate. Cricket has been very kind to me. And I'll never forget that. I mean, what also stands out is the many friendships you make on the cricket tour. People who you have idolized are now your friends. Ian Chappell, for example. I remember when he wrote his book, and after many years later, I was working in marine sports. And all I wanted was a copy of his book, and no one could help me with it because it was out of print. And I searched for 8 years for his book, and I finally got a copy of Chappelli on a tour to Pune, on a sales trip to Pune. And I treasured that copy, and it so happened that after 2 months, I got a hardback of that copy, which I treasured too. So, I mean, book collecting is another passion for me. Book reading is another passion. So I've been really fortunate.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you about that too. Is there any particular book or books that you can tell us about which you the discovery of which was a story in itself?
Well, I can tell you something about a small souvenir which I managed to buy. There was this Raddiwala, as they call them in Mumbai, a guy who sells scrap and old newspapers and old books. And he did not have any old books, but he had a few old magazines, and I used to go to him often to find whether he's got any cricket stuff. And many a time he used to point to a souvenir, India versus West Indies in 74-75. The Hindu newspaper had published that souvenir. And somehow I did not buy that souvenir from him. I think he was selling it for only 5 rupees, but I somehow did not buy it because in the bookshop I worked for, had a lot of copies of that souvenir. So I did not really pay too much attention to it, because I knew that if I ever wanted to buy, if I ever afforded to buy one, I would have bought it from the bookshop which I worked at, that's the Marine Sports. But somehow this gentleman at this Raddiwala shop forced me to buy this souvenir. He said, you have refused me very often, now please take it. So I bought it for 5 rupees. I went home and I flipped through the pages, and I discovered that the souvenir had autographs of every player except maybe one of the West Indies team. And there were autographs of the Indian players as well. And that was just unbelievable.
Oh, wow. And what an iconic
series. I just passed that shop the other day and I peeped in, and the man is not there. I don't know whether he's living.
Oh, wow. What an iconic series that too. One of the great series in India. Terrific. And these are the sort of little things. I mean, you bought it for, when did you buy this? When was this purchased?
This must have been in the late 80s.
Late 80s. So, okay. So 5 rupees was much more than 5 rupees now. But even then, I mean, the joy you must have got when you opened that and saw it.
Yeah, many times. I mean, I recently got an autographed copy of Gary Sobel's autobiography on the roadside.
Oh, autographed by him? I mean, by him?
Yes,
wow.
Autographed by Sobel, yes.
Wow.
And I also got a Playfair Cricket Annual from a old bookshop in Villa Parle, which had autographs of a few English players done with a fountain pen. I think that included Freddie Truman. So my forays into book scavenging also has been fruitful.
And there's memorabilia as well. I mean, apart from books, you also collect cricket memorabilia, right?
A bit. I've been fortunate. I get a lot of gifts from people. For example, a friend of mine and a former colleague, Krishna Warrior, went to the Bradman Museum a couple of years ago, and he got me some great memorabilia from the Bradman Foundation. One of them was 4 sheets of Bradman's first-class centuries. And I think that box included a score sheet of the India versus New South Wales game in 47-48.
Wow.
So people keep on giving me gifts. So that's how. I don't really venture out buying memorabilia because of the cost.
Yeah, I mean... I personally haven't seen a personal library as big as yours. Maybe there is somebody there. I mean, I've been to the Roger Page bookshop in Australia, which is of course a shop, but in terms of a house, you probably have one of the.
Yeah, I've been there twice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you probably have one of the best collections. So let's wrap this up then. This has been a great discussion, but just wrapping up about your own journey and in journalism, and how much do you think, of course there's been, from the outside we can see that there's been massive changes in cricket coverage, but from a personal point of view, what do you think are the 2 or 3 big changes that have happened since you got into the profession?
Obviously social media. Because now, even the TV has become less important. All stories break on social media. It's something that you've got to accept. You've got to accept that it is good because you reach out to so many more people. For example, Facebook has been tremendous. Twitter, I'm not very often on Twitter, but I can't do without Facebook. I mean, you connect with so many people on Facebook. And the exposure is so much. If I write a story in the print edition, and if I post it on Facebook, it's read by so many people. I mean, it's a sea change, which must be good. I'm sure there are more positives than negatives to this happening.
And talking about social media, I mean, with the sort of necessity almost for stories to be widely read and to appeal to a wide audience, is there then automatically also sort of a demotivation to cover local cricket? Or, as an editor, do you make sure that that part of it continues as well?
No, that cannot stop. I mean, the local coverage, at least in our paper, will not stop. Our emphasis will be on local. There is a particular satisfaction you get in covering local and in also making a local page. The satisfaction is, you cannot measure that. And I think the emphasis must be on local, being a Mumbai paper, and I think that will never stop in our paper.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because I think, in the urge for clicks and going viral, a lot of publications have neglected the local for the more appealing. So that is great to know. And this was great chatting with you, Clayton. And I know I can
Thank you.
I can go on and on when it comes to speaking to you, but let us probably stop now, and maybe we'll get you back at some point at a later date.
India win. He'll come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India